Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
California's decision to sue 5 major oil companies is welcome news for environmentalists, but the state isn't breaking new ground. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Imperial Beach took legal action 6 years ago, and KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has more on that suit and the new one just filed.
San Diego's embattled coastal community of Imperial Beach joined Marin and San Mateo counties in 2017 in asking oil and coal companies for billions of dollars in property damage costs linked to climate change. The city was already feeling the impact of rising seas.
We're surrounded by water. We have the estuary to the south, the Pacific coast to the west, and the bay to the north. And projections show that we are going to be severely impacted by sea level rise.
The lawsuit argued greenhouse gas emissions cause sea level rise, which leads to coastal flooding, beach erosion, and the need to rebuild wastewater and stormwater systems. And the lawsuit argues the companies did it willfully.
They knew that the impacts from burning fossil fuels would be severe, and they knew the consequences that would result from that, and they still decided to keep that from the public.
The lawsuit remains active. California, meanwhile, is now suing 5 major oil companies for misleading the public about climate change. That lawsuit comes as the state deals with record heat, wildfires, severe weather, and sea level rise. The legal action may be late, but it is welcome.
I think it's really important that we hold the polluters accountable for the damage that they've done. And even though it takes some time, I think it's really significant that a state the size of California is joining this effort.
The state's lawsuit alleges oil companies intentionally suppressed information about climate change and that the firms continue to deceive the public today. Scientists say the world is running out of time to slow global warming. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Overnight tonight, we have pretty quiet weather for us, thankfully, but there are changes brewing for later this week. A notable change for some. Temperatures down to 66 late tonight into San Diego, about 57 into Mount Laguna. And you can see we're generally dry across all of the west. We are dry locally, a couple of showers up into Colorado. And it'll still be relatively warm in the interior for Tuesday afternoon, but changes are brewing, which we will talk about in just a little bit. So stay with us.
An area of La Jolla popular for watching sea lions will not be reopening to the public this fall. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says visitors will have to enjoy the animals from a distance.
Point La Jolla is a rocky outcropping right next to La Jolla Cove, a perfect resting place for sea lions. But for years, city officials have been struggling to prevent people from getting too close to the animals, sometimes taking selfies. That can trigger aggressive behavior and can cause mother sea lions to abandon their offspring. The city had already closed Point La Jolla for the pupping season from May to October. But the risky interactions have continued, so the city council voted Monday to keep the area closed year-round.
The evolving process to where we are today has illuminated several aspects about Point La Jolla. First, the seasonal closure worked. From May through October, the closure protected the public from sea lions, minimized interactions and conflict, and gave our rangers the enforcement tools they needed to let the public experience the wildlife and our coastal resources from a safe distance.
The year-round closure will last for up to 7 years under an agreement with the California Coastal Commission. The city is also exploring adding more signage and gates and potentially setting up surveillance cameras. Harassing sea lions is a federal crime that can come with prison time and tens of thousands of dollars in fines. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
When it opened nearly 2 years ago, the extension of the Blue Line brought trolley service north to UC San Diego, and one of the new stops along the way is Nobel Drive. But how easy is it to get to and from that station? KPBS reporter John Carroll took a walk with a group of people who wanted to find out.
One of the places it's now much easier to reach is University City. But getting to the trolley, to the Nobel Drive station, that's not so easy.
Sometimes it's hard to walk around streets that were designed just for cars.
The problem is those streets and sidewalks are what get you to this trolley station. Will Moore is the policy counsel for Circulate San Diego. The nonprofit's mission is to create excellent mobility choices and vibrant, healthy neighborhoods. Today, that means taking a tour, a walk audit of the neighborhoods surrounding the Nobel Drive station. Safety vests on, they head out.
This is usually the intersection I have an issue with.
The walk is led by Circulate Assistant Planner Maria Walker.
There's no crosswalk here. You have to go all the way there, cross.
In addition to the lack of a crosswalk, trolley riders approaching from the west have to walk through a shopping center to get to the station.
To be safe, we're going to take the crosswalk all the way down here.
The walk audit route takes them through the shopping center to Gilman Drive, up to Via La Jolla Drive, and onto Nobel, where they cross the freeway and then walk back to the trolley station. Along the way, plenty of issues are discovered.
There's no crosswalk, there's no traffic signal. The truncated domes are faced diagonally, so someone with visual impairments probably wouldn't know which direction they're walking.
As they walk, the walkers take notes of the issues they see.
Yeah, it's a faded crosswalk right here.
At one stop, Walker, a native of New York City, makes an observation that may surprise a lot of San Diegans.
I felt safer walking in New York, knowing that pedestrians, I feel like it's more enforced for pedestrian right away.
Eventually, the group makes its way to the 5, crossing on the north side, returning on the south, and finally back to the trolley station, where recent University City transplant Trey Hanula had some thoughts.
Myself, earlier walking around this neighborhood, I almost got hit by a car just today. There's a lot of sidewalks that are inadequate for not just everyday students and shoppers, but also those with mobility impairments, visual, hearing impairments. It's not super safe.
The information gleaned from the notes the walkers took today will be distilled into a report which will eventually make its way to the City Council. The hope being that what was learned on the walk audit will translate into repairs and improvements out there. In University City, John Carroll, KPBS News.
There's a surge of migrants coming across the border into San Diego. Local shelters are at capacity, triggering street releases in the county. Meanwhile, migrants also continue to be dropped off at transit stations on their way out of town. And just like organizations showed up at the border, organizations came to transit stations to help them any way they can.
These street releases are challenging, and certainly for the people who are being released, it's a big challenge for them and a challenge for those of us who are serving. These are refugees. These are people who are coming to seek refuge in the United States, and the countries that they are from reflect many of the conflicts going on around the world.
And a spokesperson for San Diego County Supervisor Jim Desmond says more than 2,000 migrants have been dropped off. The stereotype that poor people tend to make impulsive, short-sighted decisions like taking out a high-interest loan to make rent is being challenged by new research. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson has more.
SDSU professor Isha Sharma studies the psychology of feeling poor, like you don't have enough time or money to meet your needs, regardless of income.
It could be because you have a car that has broken down. It could be because you're trying to save up for a child or a home.
Past research suggests that when people feel poor, they make bad, short-sighted decisions. They choose a smaller payout now over a bigger payout later, like taking out a high-interest loan to make rent.
Does that mean that they're stupid, they're short-sighted, they're impulsive, they just want money now? That's one interpretation.
Sharma has another theory.
They have really important needs, and paying their rent today might feel a lot more important.
Her team tested it by experimenting with immediate and longer-term needs. When the need was less urgent, they found that short-sighted effect went away, sometimes even reversed.
So people actually become more patient, potentially arguably more thoughtful when their needs have longer time horizons.
The takeaway?
Being poor or feeling poor doesn't necessarily make you a poor decision maker.
The research may lend more credibility to direct cash assistance programs, where people can choose which needs to meet. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
There's no hitting the brakes on gas prices in San Diego County. The average price of a gallon of regular gas rose nearly 3 cents today to over $5.84. And according to AAA, that's over 33 cents more than 1 week ago and nearly 58 cents more than a month ago. AAA says oil costs are putting pressure on prices at the pump, but the rise is being tempered by much lower demand. The United Auto Workers' historic strike against General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis has entered its 4th day with still no deal in sight. Negotiations floundered over the weekend. Mike Valerio takes a look at where things stand.
Weekend negotiations saw little progress between the United Auto Workers and the big three automakers.
We still have a long way to go.
While the strike remains targeted at one plant for each company, the union warns it could intensify efforts this week if its demands are not met.
We'll see how things progress the next few days, and if we have to amp up pressure, that's what we're going to do.
Top of the list for workers, an immediate 20% raise, followed by 4 additional 5% raises over the 4-year deal. All 3 companies have countered with a 20% raise during the life of the contract with an immediate 10%.
We gave up a lot in 2008 to help Ford out during the recession. We didn't get any raises for 3 contracts. So it's time for us to get something.
Analysts say the U.S. economy is getting bruised, but the strike's impact isn't likely to push the nation into a recession.
It would depend very much on how long the strike lasts and exactly who's affected by it.
The spillover is already impacting non-striking workers, with both GM and Ford announcing temporary layoffs on Friday. Suppliers working with the big 3 could also face layoffs soon. Impacted states like Michigan will see a decrease in tax revenue, and buying a car could get more expensive.
It's not that we're going to wreck the economy. We're going to wreck their economy, the economy that only works for the billionaire class.
I'm Mike Valerio reporting.
Hollywood studios and striking writers are set to return to the bargaining table on Wednesday. The Writers Guild of America sent a message to members today confirming the meeting. The last time the two sides met was in August. There has been progress on the writers' demand for regulating use of artificial intelligence, but streaming residuals and a proposal for a mandatory staffing levels in writers' rooms are still on the table. A potential government shutdown is getting closer by the minute. Over the weekend, a group of House Republicans have come to terms on a short-term funding bill. But as John Lawrence reports, nothing is set in stone, and the clock is still ticking.
There's less than 2 weeks for Capitol Hill to try and prevent the government from going broke and be forced to close its doors.
I do hope that we can avoid a government shutdown. In 2013, when Republicans shut down the government back then, it was very, very costly to millions of Americans.
6 Republican members of the House, 3 from the House Freedom Caucus, and 3 with the Main Street Caucus, closed a deal Sunday on a short-term spending plan they hope will prevent a shutdown. But will the rest of the GOP conference give it the nod?
We will do that this week. I gave them an opportunity this weekend to try to work through this, and we'll bring it to the floor, win or lose, and show the American public who's for the Department of Defense.
Republican sources close to the matter say the agreement has a 31-day continuing resolution that comes with a GOP-approved border security package. But some House conservatives are already giving the idea a thumbs down.
I strongly support their effort to stand firm and demand the kind of budget cuts necessary to make a small down payment on fiscal responsibility and reform.
In the meantime, the deadline is inching closer.
The House Republican Civil War is hurting hard-working American taxpayers and limiting our ability to be able to solve problems on their behalf.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
A lot of vehicles that used to only run on human power have been electrified: bikes, scooters, and skateboards. Their offer of greater speed and ease of use has encouraged travelers and environmentalists who want to reduce our reliance on gas-powered cars. But are they safe? KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has the story.
This is a Blix.
Chloe Lauer shows me her electric bike in a downtown park. She points out the video screen that displays her battery charge.
So this is like a full battery. You can see how fast you're going, and then this is the pedal assist.
And the tools that control the bike's motor.
And you can put it up, using the up arrow or down.
Electric bikes can be pedaled like a regular bike. They can also run just on their motor or help you pedal, giving your leg power a strong motorized boost. Some cyclists have called electric bikes a game changer. Lauer, who is director of the San Diego County Bike Coalition, does not disagree.
We love e-bikes because it's getting more cyclists on the road, and because we want to expand cycling as a mainstream thing. The more people, the more mainstream it is.
The goal of getting people out of their cars and on a bike is a step toward addressing the threat of global warming. Transportation accounts for half of San Diego's greenhouse gas emissions, but the move to electrify bikes and scooters has raised concerns among people in emergency medicine. Dr. Vishal Bansal is chief of trauma at Scripps Mercy Hospital, and he's seen a lot of accidents linked to motorized scooters, which are available on the street for rent.
You can pick one up anytime and start driving it. So if you're intoxicated, if you have really no good experience on a scooter, no one is wearing a helmet. At least I haven't seen that when I'm seeing these people in town.
UC San Diego did a study on just over 100 hospital admissions related to motorized scooters in 2017 and 2018. They found a dramatic monthly increase in admissions during that time period with a wide variety of injuries, something Bansal can vouch for.
We do see a fair amount of head injuries. Head injuries can be mild, moderate, or severe. The majority, luckily, are on the mild or moderate side, but we have had some severe head injury and death from head injury from these vehicles.
Wrist and rib fractures are also common. And what about e-bikes? Bansal says he sees a lot of kids riding them unsafely, and he thinks their speed is not properly regulated.
To me, this subject is personal. Years ago, I was riding my bike to work in San Diego when I was hit by a car. I suffered traumatic brain injury, and I did end up in the Scripps Mercy Trauma Ward. It took me 3 months before I was well enough to go back to work, so I know what it's like, how dangerous it can be to ride an unprotected vehicle on a road full of cars.
When you do have that interplay where you have bicyclists, right next to cars, you're essentially putting a tank next to, this itty bitty, sticks, litty bitty sticks, and someone in their itty bitty helmet. So it's kind of a formidable task to go biking on our regular streets.
Elizabeth Barrera Rivest is also an emergency room physician who sees the worst results of that mismatched vehicular traffic, but she's also a member of the Health Advisory Committee of San Diego's Climate Action Campaign. You want to talk about health risks? She says those that come from climate change are severe and numerous, including asthma, heat stroke, and premature birth. The UCSD study on e-scooters describes the vehicles as inherently dangerous. Barrera Rivest argues their level of safety depends on the user.
It's the same as anything else. You have to take control of your own personal safety, and if they're treated as a toy, then certainly they're not a safe modality.
At San Diego State, racks of e-scooters are available for rent, and you see them zipping past pedestrians on sidewalks and bike paths. Cesar Jimenez bought his own scooter, which he drives to school after he parks his car off campus. I asked if he feels unsafe on the roads.
No, I don't, to be honest. No, not really. I never feel like unsafe. There's certain areas of San Diego that definitely, I think it would be nice to have those spaces for bikes or scooters. But there's some parts of San Diego I think we can get better on it.
I find the scooters, and they're just perfect. And I just hop on the scooter, and sometimes it just helps me out when I'm in a dilemma and when I'm in the problem.
Some students said they don't feel safe on a road with a scooter, but with new electric cars going for more than $60,000 a pop, Barrera Rivest says finding an affordable, global-friendly way to travel may depend on those kinds of vehicles.
I think that we face a choice where we either have to make some sacrifices to be more environmentally friendly, or we face the greatest existential threat to humans.
Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Groundwater storage is about to get a boost across the Sacramento Valley thanks to a new project. It could end up doubling the amount of water Folsom Lake holds. Ashley Nunfria explains how it will work.
It's right here beneath our feet.
It's a change we can't see, but a change that's needed in Northern California.
Now, the state has seen a lot of groundwater level decline.
After years of drought and battling the effects of climate change, our region's groundwater is not where it needs to be. And now the Sacramento Regional Water Authority is working to save it.
Essentially taking extra surface water supply and using wells and reversing the flow that wells normally operate and inject water into our groundwater aquifer beneath our feet.
It's through a new groundwater bank project that could double our storage.
We have the capacity to store twice the size of Folsom Reservoir in terms of additional water supply.
It works just like a bank. In the wet years, pumps would take excess water from the Folsom Reservoir and rivers to store it underground.
To take that extra water supply and inject it directly into our aquifers.
And in dry years, they would draw water back up to the surface to use when it's needed most.
So the amount of water we'd be taking is a really small percentage. And again, it's in a time where there's actually excess flow in the rivers and streams, and so we wouldn't be creating any impacts.
By using existing infrastructure from 20 local water districts to increase storage naturally, to save water and not waste it.
To take that extra surface water supply so it's not lost out the Golden Gate Bridge as it flows out the delta.
On average, groundwater makes up 40% of the region's water supply, but in drought, it can make up 60%. Not having enough can impact ecosystems and homes that need it most.
If we're not managing our groundwater sustainably, they can be impacted. The water level can drop below those wells and they can be impacted by overpumping.
With the goal of locking in the bank by 2024.
We already have kind of a proof of concept that this type of project will work, but this is really taking it to the next level.
That was Ashley Nunfria reporting, and they're asking for the public's input on areas where they can expand the bank next.
As we take a look at our weather headlines here on KPBS, we are dealing with a bit of a somewhat warm start to the week into midweek for the inland areas, but we are very pleasantly cool for the coast, and we will turn cooler around mid to late week in those inland areas. We'll look at that in just a bit. And there'll be a little bit of a breeze in the transitioning, but nothing too jarring for us. Nothing too jarring for us this week. We have a slight increase in clouds this evening and tonight, especially along the coast. Temperatures will drop down to around 66. The Tuesday forecast dry. A little warm in the interior. The warmest will be farther east, and most of us are dry. You can see a couple of showers up into Colorado, a long ways from us. Tomorrow's forecast, we're looking at a high of 74 in San Diego, still 79 El Cajon. You get to Borrego Springs, 94 degrees. The seasons are beginning to change, but it's going to get cooler out there in a couple more days. Up atop Mount Laguna, and in town there, 65, so a little cool for some. But later this week, the cooler air really begins to overspread much of the western U.S. And into the interior as well. Some of our friends up in the mountains of the interior Northwest will see some accumulating snow later this week. It's always fun when we get to that time of the season when we begin to see some changes there. Temperatures barely changing along the coastline. Low clouds in the morning, brighter in the afternoon. 75s across the board. Overnight lows, though, you're going to notice a little bit of a change. 57 will be your low on Thursday, so that'll be a bit cooler. Inland areas, here we find a little bit of variety. 77 Tuesday, back to 75 Wednesday, Thursday, and then we do warm back up to 78 degrees in the inland areas come Saturday. Into the mountains, here we find a bit more variety. 65 on our warmest day Tuesday. Our coolest day will be Thursday as this trough kicks through, and it will be breezy Wednesday and Thursday in the mountains. The deserts go from 94 all the way down to a high of 85 Thursday. Recovering to near 90 into the weekend. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, 5 American prisoners are flown out of Iran after the U.S. agrees to a deal. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The San Diego County Fair is going back in time for next year's fair. Let's Go Retro will be the theme, so get out those poodle skirts, the baggy pants, and the grunge flannels. Fair spokesperson Tristan Hallman says it'll all be back in style.
No one does a theme like we do, and we're very excited about this particular one because and you can see the excitement in both our community and our staff in terms of the nostalgia that we can bring to this fair.
And in addition to the retro fashion, Hallman says people can expect retro arcade games as well as musical blasts from the past. Next year's fair will run from June 12th through July 7th. And good news for fans of Blink-182, the pop-punk band that started in Poway, put out a video trailer announcing their new album, One More Time. They started recording the 17 new songs just last year and continued during their reunion tour. It's the band's first album with guitarist and lead vocalist Tom DeLonge in 12 years. One More Time is due out on October 20th. And here is a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR's Morning Edition will be covering President Joe Biden's speech to the United Nations General Assembly. And KPBS Midday Edition is talking about our digital lives, from the rise of loneliness to the trend of minimizing our digital footprints. And that airs at noon on KPBS FM. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.